to get this done. So then, because both my mouse and keyboard are kind of running low on battery.
Uh-oh. Then is everything going to shut?
Well, I did charge up my mouse, so it's got a little bit of fuel in it to last us all the way through, but the keyboard is about close to 15%. So, yeah, I'm ready. You ready?
Yeah. Welcome to Go Kaiju Show. I'm your co-host, Kent, and with me is your other co-host,
Jason. How's it going, peeps?
I had to redo the beginning again, so that's why I'm giggling. But here we are. We're stepping away from Kamen Rider for a bit, and instead what we're going to do is talk about 10 years of the 2014 Godzilla film, as well as a decade of the MonsterVerse saga. As of this recording, we are like 4 days out from the official anniversary date of the film, and by the time you guys get this, it'll be beyond the decade mark. So we're not perfect, I guess, but that's kind of what we're going to do. It's sort of a brief revisiting of the 2014 film, sort of its legacy, but then also just the MonsterVerse as a whole, simply because obviously the 2014 film is what kicked off the whole MonsterVerse. So, Jason, is there anything you needed to cover before we proceed?
Not much. Just say make sure to hit the subscribe button above and down below wherever you're watching us, and make sure to hit smash the like button as well. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
All right. So the 2014 Godzilla film. Sorry again, my allergies are still really bad.
And you can see how pumped he is right now.
I'm tired. I was outside of my kids' soccer games in 50-degree weather. It's cloudy and it's been off and on rainy here this morning. It's been cold. So yeah, allergies and then the weather this morning, man, it's like got me all wiped.
Yeah, but I was just telling him that over here it's nice and sunny and 73. It's going to be in the mid 70s here, so I'm going to try to get this thing wrapped up so I can go outside as soon as I can. So,
and by the time you see this, Jason will have gone outside, enjoyed himself, but then caused a major car wreck as well. He will be in the hospital by the time this
minus that. Minus the latter.
But anyway, getting back on topic here. The 2014 Godzilla film, in my personal opinion, I think is still the best made MonsterVerse film to date so far. That I don't think takes anything away from any of the other films. I think Kong Skull Island is pretty well made, but I think there were some things about that film that they didn't take advantage of, I thought, in terms of its story. And as a result, I always was sort of kind of against the tide with most fans. A lot of fans say that they think it's the best and really enjoy it, and that's fine. I just thought they missed out on an opportunity to really display more of the fauna of Skull Island, like most Kong movies have done in the past. And I thought that was a missed opportunity, I thought, with that film. And there were issues with the story where I kind of thought Kong's absence was maybe a little bit longer than necessary. And unlike the 2014 Godzilla movie, it seemed like Kong, in many respects, was sort of background character. But with Godzilla 2014, I think Gareth Edwards hit it out of the ballpark. But if you do go onto our website, you will see that when I wrote the review for this film a decade ago, that my initial viewing of the film, I was sort of so-so on it. And that's simply because there was no other Godzilla film that was like this before. This was a Godzilla film that director Edwards had sort of taken some inspiration from movies like Alien and Jaws and was teasing Godzilla more specifically to not only try to create an awesome buildup at that airport in Hawaii, which in my opinion is still the greatest Godzilla entrance ever in a movie so far, but continued to do that until the final battle. And I understand a lot of people are very upset about the fact that after that initial buildup and reveal of Godzilla at that airport, that they were disappointed that more of him wasn't displayed. But I think a lot of people are sort of missing the point there, because again, Director Edwards he enjoys and is inspired by Alien and Jaws, and I find that to be very interesting. Response by some fans, because many fans of Godzilla are fans of Jaws and Alien as well. And I just found that sort of response weird.
I was actually going to mention about that. You know, a lot of like everyone out there reveres both of those movies, no doubt about it.
I'm not a huge fan of Alien myself, but
but we still, respect as far as how that.
I respect the movie. Yes. Jaws, I think, is incredible.
But then, they say, oh, these two movies are really good. But then when they look at the 2014 Godzilla movie, they say maybe it's sort of mixed things about it here and there. And then it's sort of what we discussed about for many episodes in the past, as far as the hypocrisy of the whole Godzilla fandom, where they say one thing, but then sort of contradict or be a little bit hypocritical on the other thing, when it's literally the same thing that they sort of revered or has done before in past Godzilla movies or other movies, so on and so forth.
Well, yeah, you're hitting on something I didn't want to talk about until we got a little bit later in the discussion, but since you brought it up, might as well bring it up.
Try not to take too long.
Well, no, I mean, I mean, here's the thing, like fandom in general, it's not just the Godzilla fan. You find it in everything. You find it in DC, Marvel, Star Wars, Star Trek. I mean, you name it.
Right. Yeah.
Any fandom that has any sort of presence, like on social media, which is basically every fandom. I've even seen it in Masters of the Universe. And the funny thing about that was that Masters of the Universe, other than people taking pot shots at New Adventures, which in my opinion is actually a pretty good series, other than that, the Masters of the Universe fandom was one of the tamest and one of the best to sort of get along in, until Kevin Smith released Revelation on Netflix 2 or 3 years ago, whenever that was. And then all of a sudden that fandom started blowing up and having its own issues as well. But there was one, I was going to talk about this like a month or two ago, kind of when New Empire was released. And there was this one individual on Facebook. I am not friends with this individual, but I blocked him anyways because this guy was being a complete and total jerk. He was going out of his way finding people who were Godzilla fans and were expressing either excitement for New Empire, had seen it and enjoyed it, and really attacking them and saying stuff to the effect of like, Godzilla -1 is superior. Why would you like any of the MonsterVerse films? It's total crap and all that. And I am sitting there and I'm reading just some of his responses to people. Not only was this guy just being a complete and total asswipe to everybody.
I would call that certain person, with kind of a high quality movie -1, as it just seems like he's sort of like one of those teetotalers.
I would say a purist, but the thing that bothers me is that he was going out of his way to insult people that not only like the MonsterVerse, but like New Empire. And I didn't confront him because there's no point in doing that because you're not going to accomplish anything. But I blocked him. But Here's the thing, like, I understand that there's a sect of the fandom that doesn't like the MonsterVerse for whatever reason. I think some responses have some validity to them. I think if it's just personal taste, hey, you like what you like, and that's fine. But I think a lot of people, when they try to justify it, to me, what I find, again, like you said, is hypocrisy, because this one guy is an older fan in his 50s. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm going, you do realize that what has happened in like some of these MonsterVerse films is no different than what has sort of happened before in some other Godzilla films over the years. And what I think some fans like him, what some of their problem is, not only are they just gatekeeper assholes, but they, I think, forget that when they grew up on like the Showa era films, which are, let's face it, they're goofy. I still love the Showa era. The Showa era is like my favorite era of Godzilla. We have to admit, though, it is a real goofy era. And the series jumps the shark pretty quickly after that first Godzilla film. And I think fans like him and some of these purists that are going after the MonsterVerse series, I think they forget that some of what's happening in the MonsterVerse is kind of no different than what happened back in the Showa era.
Yeah, I was going to say, because essentially 2014 sort of is like the 1954, where it's just all serious and you have human story. And, with that Godzilla, he's sort of hidden here and there.
And I want to quickly correct anyone, because I can hear people out there who are listening to you at this moment and being like, oh, 2014 is not the 54 movie. It's, the 54. That's not what Jason's saying.
Yeah.
Jason's saying in terms of its tonal approach.
Yeah, it's aesthetic, sort of tonal, and sort of kind of having the human storyline be integral to what's going on in their surroundings and everything. And then like shortly after that, then it starts to get a little bit goofy and out there. And like what you said, that the Showa era started to quickly go into that goofy route after the 54.
It did.
Well, look what's going on in the MonsterVerse. It's sort of kind of going in the same template or direction that
it has. Let's face it, it has. It officially has. But the second point with someone like that is that they forget that when they grew up and watched those Showa films, they were kids. When you're a kid, even though you may watch something and maybe on some level understand what you're watching is kind of silly, you go with it more than an adult would. If they saw, let's say, Godzilla vs. Hedorah for the first time at the age of 35, let's say, and when you're a kid, you're more accepting of what stories throw at you. You go with it. You're more willing to go with it. And to go along with that, there's nostalgia that plays into effect. I see a lot of what I call purists that will hate on the MonsterVerse but defend the Showa era, but yet their arguments, they don't seem to see themselves and realize that they're basing their defense of the Showa era on nostalgia rather than a legitimate argument. And it's like, first of all, again, you like what you like, and why are you shitting on people that like the MonsterVerse? You're basing it off of nostalgia, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I have an affinity for some of those Godzilla films because they were some of the first ones I saw, even though I understand as an adult now, I'm like, yeah, they're kind of goofy and stuff, but I still really like them because they were some of the first ones that I saw. And another point is, why are you being such a jerk to people? Not just because it's their taste and their opinion, but we want this fan base to continue, that even though you may not like it, like the movies or a particular movie or whatever, it's helping to grow the fandom for generations to come. And not every movie has to be catered to you. The reason why characters like Godzilla, many comic book characters, James Bond, etc., the reason why they live on, and I've said this many times over the history of this podcast, the reason why characters like that live on for decades is because they make changes every so often. They try new things. Some things work, some things don't. Other things do work for some people, other things don't, and some things, even if you don't like it, are successful. Some things you do like may not be successful. I love the 98 film. That's no secret. I love that 98 film. It made money. It was financially successful, but because of the ridiculous outcry that the fandom had, we never got the trilogy. And as a result, that iteration of Godzilla is gone. And so
even though that a lot of people still crap on the 98 Godzilla movie, but yet they're fans of the cartoon itself. So it's
this whole idea of, I know what Godzilla should be and it needs to fit this mold, and if it doesn't, then it's not Godzilla. You need to try something new, because otherwise after a while things get stale. Things become the same. And for example, like even with the MonsterVerse here, I was sort of disappointed initially when King of the Monsters came out in 19, because I thought, oh my gosh, like here they are, they're already jumping the shark. I remember saying on this podcast when we discussed it 5 years ago that I was disappointed in it, because I'm like, what is going on here? You had the 2014 and the Kong movie that were totally serious, and I thought we were going to try to get something not dark, but more serious in its approach. And here they are already kind of throwing in outlandish, kind of goofy stuff. And I was against that film for a while. But then as time went on, and then Godzilla vs. Kong came out, and as I got older and I kind of settled down a little bit, and I looked at the MonsterVerse at that time as a whole, I'm like, it's no different than how the Showa era started to unravel itself. And by unravel, I mean in terms of how it gradually changed with each film that started coming out. And I began to realize, I'm like, you know what? I actually kind of like this more. I went, because my son loves King of the Monsters a lot, and he's watched it quite a bit over the last few years. And as I watched it quite a bit with him during the last few years, I began to realize, yes, it's not perfect at the time, it wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. But I realized it's no different than Showa, but I actually kind of like it now. And I can enjoy it more than I did 5 years ago. And I do like King of the Monsters a lot more than I did 5 years ago. Godzilla vs. Kong, I have a few issues with it. It's not exactly the kind of film I would have made if I were director, but I look at it and I go, I really enjoy it. And when we were talking about the build up to New Empire, I go, I'm on board for the silly, goofy, outlandish Godzilla movies now. I want to see off the walls stuff that just is bonkers, because it's not only did I start accepting that's where the series was going, but I'm like, I want fun in my films. Godzilla Minus One is a terrific film, but it's dead serious. It's hard for me to watch that film. I watched that movie here the other day, and as good as that movie is, it's tough to watch. It really is, because it is a dark film on an emotional level. And something like New Empire is a nice opposite. It is nothing more than a fun giant monster romp where you have Godzilla and Kong acting as superheroes, basically. And I love New Empire. New Empire is not perfect. I have some issues with it. But as we talked about here a while ago when we reviewed that movie, I had a fun time. I had a fun time with that movie. It's not the kind of new empire I would have made, but for what it is, I loved it. I really do. I like the MonsterVerse series as a whole because in many respects, and I know it's not the MonsterVerse will not produce 15 films like the original Showa era. I mean, that period in cinema history, let alone Godzilla cinema history, is done for. We'll never see anything like that again. But where the MonsterVerse has been going, and I think will continue to go, is very much a modern mirror image of what happened to the Showa era in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And I like that. And it's helping individuals, younger individuals, more specifically, like my son, who is 9.5, like really get into Godzilla more. Yeah, I can show him DVDs of the older films and stuff. He does like those, and he does watch those on occasion. But when he sees a newer film that is made during the time he's alive, and especially in that very impressionable, youthful age group that he's in, it solidifies something in him. And I think that's wonderful because, again, like I said, not everything has to be made for you. I don't like Shin Godzilla really at all. There are things about the movie I like and respect about and understand why some people do, but that's fine. Like, that movie's not made for me. If you like it, hey, more power to you. I've always said that on this podcast for like, 7 years, 8 years, however long it's been. If you like that movie, great, but it wasn't for me and I don't care for it. But that doesn't mean I'm going to go out there and be like, hey, Jason, you like that Shin Godzilla movie? You suck, man. Like, you're not a true fan. You like that stupid movie. What are you thinking? That movie's just like a flaming turd on a plate. What are you thinking?
Quit being a bully.
Yeah, I'm not like that. It's like, you like that movie? Okay, great. But, I don't. But with the MonsterVerse and the 2014 film, I think very slowly is starting to receive a little bit more love from the fandom because I think people are starting to revisit it more and realize that there was something more there, that what Gareth Edwards did, I would even call maybe more artistic than what we've seen in most of the other MonsterVerse films. That it's not just a giant monster film that is made for fun, even though that's part of it, but I think it's artistic in its way because I get the sense that there was more. I just lost the term. Thank you, allergies. That it was more meticulously thought out in terms of its shots and its story than most of the other MonsterVerse films.
I would say that, but also I would think that they were playing on the whole MonsterVerse theme even before this movie was made. So I would think with what you were talking about, I would say that they were at least building the groundwork in sort of this whole universe moving forward after this 2014 movie, which obviously has.
That was the hope, and a lot of it hinged on whether or not it was successful. I mean, I think Kong was already somewhat in the works, and I think I
think that they were at the time trying to negotiate with Universal Studios at the time to try to get the rights for Kong, which at that time they still had it. And I think that it was Legendary that was negotiating the rights and then just transferring it over to Warner Brothers, because I think Warner Brothers has the actual rights to like the original 33 original Kong movie.
They have the right to distribute it, I believe.
I think
but the whole like the King title and King Kong, they can't because like the Cooper estate owns that particular title, which is why Kong is never referred to as King Kong in the MonsterVerse, because it has everything to do with legal rights and all that stuff. And I think King of the Monsters was, and don't quote me on this, but I think even King of the Monsters originally was supposed to be the movie where Godzilla and Kong threw down. But then director Dodori, I think, tried and obviously successfully convinced Legendary and Warner Brothers otherwise to bring in, Ghidorah, Mothra, and Rodan. I think, like I said, don't quote me on that. But I think that was originally supposed to be the movie where Godzilla and Kong clashed. And because of the success of Godzilla versus Kong, even during the pandemic, that was like the first real blockbuster during the pandemic era. Even though it had limited theatrical release, the film made over 400 some odd million worldwide. It's the reason why New Empire is here. And now rumor has it that they already are working on a little bit of the pre-production of the 6th MonsterVerse film at this moment in time, which I'm anxious to see.
I heard that they brought someone on to write. I forget. He was on another movie, but I can't name it at the top of my head at the moment. So for right now, as far as I know, that they're doing, I think, at least the first draft for.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna. I think it's gonna be like another 3 years before we see the film, because they want to space it out enough to where you're not, sick and tired of seeing giant monsters and then that's it. But one of the things that a lot of people have given criticism of the 14 film for is the killing of Bryan Cranston.
A little bit
I always
early.
thought that was a good move because it's set up early in the MonsterVerse, and it only happened really one other time when Sally Hawkins' character was killed by Ghidorah in King of the Monsters, where it was sending the message that no one is safe in this universe. Because, I mean, look, let's face it, I've watched thousands of movies over the years, and you get to a point where sometimes you're kind of sick and tired of, you're kind of sick and tired of like your base main characters always surviving, and it ups the stakes more when you have maybe one of those big characters, maybe sometimes portrayed by a big actor like Bryan Cranston, biting the dust. And I really thought that was genuine in terms of it's setting up, hey, no one is safe. And I disagree with a lot of people because I think, yeah, would Cranston have made the movie maybe more interesting the rest of the way? Probably. But, then you get this whole thing where a lot of us sit there in the films, not in the films, in the theaters a lot of times, and we're like, yeah, we know this person and this person and this person will survive. And anytime the movie tries to make you think that any of those people are going to bite the dust, you're like, they're not going to die. They're going to be fine. And like the Star Wars saga, the original trilogy was like that. Never once did I ever believe Harrison Ford, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, were in danger. It wasn't until they made the new trilogy that, they made them go out. And unfortunately for Carrie Fisher, she actually did die. And so, they had to write her character out anyways. But yeah, it's because of newer films that they're realizing people are anticipating more times than not that your main characters are going to survive. And filmmakers today are saying we have to change that a little bit. We have to sort of make the audience kind of put them on their heels a little bit. So,
yeah. When it comes to the 2014, I know, I think one of my original criticisms, and it was a bit minor, was, and I just watched it here just recently, so it's a little bit fresh in my mind, that there was a little, it felt like some of the story or editing was a little bit off, particularly sort of in the earlier parts where you had I forget her name. I think it was it was the
Elizabeth
mother
Olsen?
of no, the mother of
Oh, Juliette Binoche.
uh yeah, Julia Binoche, where she was talking about the whole birthday thing. It just seemed like the editing part was sort of a bit weird
I
within
don't think
that.
the editing was weird, but that whole moment where young Ford and Juliette Binoche are talking, to me, it's goofy. It just is goofy because it's
Well,
stereotypical setup that just is.
for me, it was a sequence between her and Bryan Cranston when they were in the car when she mentioned about them setting up stuff for his birthday and all that stuff, and then he was kind of off in a tangent, and then she said happy birthday, and then he's like that, to me, that was a little bit of a sort of a weird edit or situation in that part, but I think that was one of my only little minute gripes on the 2014 one.
The one sequence too that I thought was even weirder than that, not weirder, but not only tropish, but just not acted real well. It was just an eye rolling trope. Was when Ford comes home, they put their son to bed, and then it's just him and his wife, and he's acting out like, I guess, one of his commanding officers, and it's just that stereotypical thing of, yeah, he's imitating a superior, and then he's making her laugh, and then they're it's just like, I've seen this 100 times. I'm kind of tired of it. I'm willing to let it go by and large because it doesn't happen for very long, but it's kind of eye roll, and I'm like, oh, please, like, like, couldn't we like have had something else where he's working on a motorcycle and he's like, I need to get out. I've seen war. I've seen buddies like tore off, half his face busted out, going riding. But Ford, please, no. And then No Easy Way Out kicks in. And then he has his own No Easy Way Out sequence as he's riding his bike up the hilly streets of San Francisco. I'm making a joke there. But still, my point is maybe they should have done something different.
So let's see.
As far as effects work, like, oh man. I'm always kind of forgiving of effects after a while because, look, let's face it. Jeez, I'm going through puberty or something here. Let's face it here. Effects after a while, do age. It's just a part of movie making. And some effects, tend to hold up a little bit better in the longer run, but there still will come a point in time in which they start to look their age and get worse from there. A lot of people, and I don't want to get too much into this whole CGI versus practical thing, but the thing is let's be honest. Practical, there have been some movies with bad practical effects, even when they were brand new movies in their time. And as much as of a Godzilla fan as I am of the Showa era, I have to admit, even as I watch some of those films, even some of my favorites like Mothra vs. Godzilla and Monster Zero, when I sit there and watch those films, I'm like, it is very clear what I'm seeing here is a model. And to some degree, it doesn't look the best. That's not a knock on Eiji Tsuburaya. And I understand people like Honda and Tsuburaya and all that are considered gods within the Godzilla fandom. And I understand why. But that doesn't necessarily mean everything that they do and touch is gold. But yeah, maybe for 64 and 65 standards at the time, maybe it was top notch. But today, I'm sorry, it does look its age. Does that mean I like the movies any less? Absolutely not. I find a charm in those films. In fact, and part of it again is because we grew up mostly watching most Showa era films for a while in our first few years of being fans. When I watch Showa era films anymore, whether it's Godzilla or Gamera, or even in general, just classic sci-fi films, even made in America, I love the fact that I can sit there and just have fun with those movies, whether it's Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, Them, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Earth versus the Flying Saucers, Monster on Campus. I understand that some of the effects, are very good and still to some degree hold up today, including some of the stop motion. But other times too, it either doesn't look all that great, or maybe there was a sequence, or in general, the effects just look outdated. I don't care. I watch movies first and foremost to be entertained. And as long as I'm having fun, to me, that's what matters the most. And, it's just one of those things where we all have to admit that, there are Showa era films, even some Heisei films, even some Millennium films, where some, if not all, the effects kind of show their age after a while. There's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, I find it very charming. One of the reasons why I love the original Ultraman series so much is because I look at it and I understand these are guys in monster suits on very rushed, cheaply made miniature sets. They look hilariously goofy, but I'm having fun. The like 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old in me is having fun watching that stuff because I'm escaping reality, which is very depressing a lot of times. It's like I just want to watch something that tickles my fancy for a while and just makes me forget about the outside world for a while. And that's okay. I am not against bad effects. As long as you deliver me something that is at least mildly entertaining and can kind of make me forget everything else for a while, I'm all for it. I don't care whether the effects are like the most up-to-date, effects that you can afford to do now, or even if they are some of the worst. All effects work after a while, whether it's practical or computer generated, will age and not look that great after a while. It's just a part of movie life. It's like us. As we age, we're not going to look pretty anymore either. We're going to get saggy and wrinkly. We're going to be slower. We're going to have creaky joints. We're not going to be sexy anymore either. Well, except for me. I'm magnificent. But no, it's just like movies. As they age, they kind of lose a little luster, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's a great time capsule because, especially if you study film and you're like us, I have grown a greater appreciation for film history because it's like, I want, like, for example, just a quick sidebar here. When I bought the original Star Trek series on DVD here like 8 years ago, and then I went through the whole series and finished it up here a year and a half ago. What Paramount did with that series is they redid effect shots, like when the Enterprise is like hovering over a planet. They look good, but let me tell you something. I wish they didn't do that because I wanted to see what the original effect shots with their miniatures and compositing looked like.
Well,
but Paramount wanted to clean it up, and I'm like, no, don't do that because I want to see what it looked like back then.
It was the same thing with Star Wars, where
don't even get me started.
Was it the older episodes and added newer effects and some sequences?
You can't find those original ones anymore anywhere unless you have them like on tape from way back in the day.
I think we probably do because I know we've recorded a bunch of movies and shows on VHSs. I'm not even sure if our parents still have those laying around over at their place. But speaking of visual effects, there's also another gap I should have probably brought up, and I think probably at least a lot of people might agree, maybe you as well, is that one of the other things is that the movie is just a bit too dark to just kind of notice what the heck is going on from time to time, even with
in parts, yes,
with some of the fights and everything. And it would have been nice if they would have lightened it up a bit.
I can't verify this because I don't have a 4K player, but I heard from people that bought the 4K version of the movie that they did clean that up for that version.
I've got the 4K version. It is still a little bit dark.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you
even with my 4K TV, it's got an option where you can adjust the picture mode and everything. I've got it on dynamic and everything, and it still makes things a little bit too dark. So you probably would have to manually brighten it up a little bit, which I didn't do, but still, just the way it still was a bit dark.
Yeah, I mean, I will agree that was a problem. The interesting thing, though, is that we never noticed it until it came out on the home video. That because when you're in a very dark theater, I mean, you can see everything, basically.
It was fine, but
yeah,
especially if you're trying to view it in the daytime like this one, like I did, it's still a bit dark.
Yeah.
What the F is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but again, like you said, you couldn't really do it a whole lot with older TVs back in the day, but with newer TVs, I tell people, like, look, okay, what you have is a legitimate gripe, but you still should quit your bitching because you can just adjust shit on your TV. I mean, it's a quick fix. Yeah, it takes you like 30 seconds to a minute to do it. Just do it. That's what I tell people. I'm like, just do it. Well, I shouldn't have to do it. Then don't watch the movie. If it's that much of a pain in the ass for you, then don't bother.
Well, that's why I just say it's just a little gripe, but yeah.
Well, no, and I'm not saying that, that argument or criticism isn't invalid. That's not what I'm saying. I agree completely. But when I still hear people like a decade later complain about it and saying that, it's too dark and I don't like watching it because you can't really, it's just like, you can adjust settings on your TV. It takes 30 seconds to a minute to do it. Do it. And if you're still coming out on a social media and complaining to the world about it, and don't watch it and shut the fuck up, and watch something else. Get out of my face, because there are too many other people complaining about other pointless shit out there as well. Just adjust the settings on your TV if you really want to watch it. And if you're complaining about doing that,
mm-hmm.
you're a lazy bitch. I mean, you really are. If you sit there with a remote and press a few buttons and you don't want to do that, whatever. Don't talk to me anymore.
But anyways, as far as the 2014 movie, since we talked about the visual effects part here, let's go into a little. I know we've gone into a little bit of the human character side of the movie. When it comes to Bryan Cranston, obviously, he was taken out kind of early in the film, but I think he sort of did his part, and I think that's the reason why he's that they killed off the character, because all he was there for essentially is to try to wrap up this whole sort of mystery that's been going on for the past 15 years from that time when the nuclear plant gets destroyed, and then all the way up to 15 years later, trying to connect everything together with the patterns of the wavelengths and everything. And that's essentially sort of his purpose in the movie, is trying to connect these wavelengths into supposedly the Mutos that destroyed this nuclear plant.
I think that, because you said wrap up, I think the term you're actually looking for is not wrap up, but setup. That he was there to basically get the ball rolling for the story. And then, once his character didn't serve a further purpose, then and again, I mean, that's probably the real main reason why. But then too, I like the fact as well, like I said earlier, I like the fact that his character was killed off, not only because his character was important, but because it was Bryan Cranston who played that character as well. That it told the audience, no, this isn't one of those movies where, all these main characters are going to survive. And that was sort of set up to some degree anyways, when his wife, Academy Award winner Juliette Binoche, was enclosed in that reactor in the first 10 or so minutes of the movie as well. But I think with Bryan Cranston, who at this moment in time in cinema history is more recognized and well known, I would say, by most people at this time in history, why he was disposed of when he was as well. I mean, not only did he serve his purpose, but it's like, hey, no one's safe here. Like, you need to be on your toes and potentially understand that, some of these other people could go at any moment as well. No one is safe. So,
yeah. And as far as the selection of Aaron Taylor Johnson and then Elizabeth Olsen, I think they did an okay job for what they did. Obviously, I'm not going to rehash kind of that whole scene that you were talking about that you were really a fan of.
In your living room.
Yeah. But I would say when it came to Elizabeth Olsen's character, it felt like she really didn't need to be in there a whole lot than what she was. Felt like maybe some screen time could have been used in other things here and there. But I mean, with her kind of being part of some of the battles between Muto and Godzilla, there, I would say some of those are a bit necessary, but some of the things, I don't know. That's just sort of my take on it. But and I know Aaron Taylor Johnson's character. I mean, talking about having this nuclear device, and then his job being kind of setting things within the device itself, and that was kind of part of his job in the military there. So he's sort of the integral part of the movie for that specific reason. But I'd say overall they did an okay job.
Aaron Taylor, I thought, at least in the first part of the film, his acting was kind of rough. And then I thought as the movie went on, it got better. Elizabeth Olsen, I thought, was always good from beginning to end. I think out of the two, she was more consistent at a higher level.
That I can at least agree with. Yeah.
I mean, she's his wife, and for him, it gives him motivation. She's there, I think, more than anything else to give him motivation to not only to get back to San Francisco, but to insert himself into the armed forces as they're trying to move that auxiliary nuclear bomb to lure the Mutos. So, you got to have some of those characters in there sometimes, because otherwise he maybe wouldn't have done it otherwise. Like, if he didn't have her in his life, perhaps, like, maybe he would have just been trying to evacuate, and then that would have been his story. Like, he just, bye, San Francisco. Oh, shit, it blew up. Like, he probably wouldn't have been involved, but because he had a wife and child back in the city, he's like, I got to figure out a way to get back. Oh, hey, Army. Yeah, I was part of, get me on there, like, I think wife and child were motivation for his character.
Well, and then, you talk about that, and then towards the end there, where he had the nuclear device on the boat there, and then traveling out towards the ocean there. I mean, at that point, he didn't really have a whole lot of energy.
Well, yeah, he thought he was going to die because the rest of his crew had been disposed of like moments earlier. He understood what the mission was. He was even told earlier, like when they were just before they did that Halo jump, that he was told by, I forget the commanding officer, but he was told, hey, like, you know, if you're in a bind, like the commanding officer said something to the effect of, if you're in a bind, don't come back. I mean, that's kind of what soldiers are told anyways. Like if you're in a situation to where, you know, this mission could be in jeopardy and maybe you're the only one or one of a few that has to move this thing forward and there's no other way of getting out, then you're supposed to go down. So,
you know, speaking of which, do you think there was really any purpose in the Halo jump except for kind of that artistic feel?
It was to get them
everything.
Yeah, it was to get them in the city because that bomb had been taken by the male Muto.
Right, but I mean, there could have been other avenues to try to get into San Francisco.
Not as quickly.
Because I mean, you can still do like helicopter and all that stuff too. Because I mean, pretty much the Mutos were already occupied with Godzilla and everything there, so it could have just maybe helicopter them in or something of the sort. But I mean, that's
I think for the number of guys they had, they would have had to have multiple helicopters, and then helicopters can't fly as high as planes, and so this
I'm not talking about the like as far as the Halo jump or anything, because I mean, there's probably other avenues of trying to get them in.
I mean, maybe they could have done helicopter or whatever, but I'm not thinking. To me, that's not a problem. That's not a problem at all. So,
just saying, just saying is like, I don't know if there was really any purpose as far as the Halo jump, except for just kind of that cool artistic feel or sequence that they did with
it's still
the Halo jump.
One of the better sequences in like not just the MonsterVerse, but Godzilla history. There are some shots in this movie that I think rival most things in the Godzilla saga. One of them is that Halo sequence, and the other one is that build-up to Godzilla being revealed on the Hawaiian island. Never in my life, whether I've seen a Godzilla movie in theaters or on home video, have I been like feeling my heart race to see his reveal. Like, because Gareth and his team did such an amazing job of sort of teasing him in bits and pieces up to that point. And then the whole Hawaiian sequence where you see him, you see a little bit of him floating under the battleship out in the bay. And then the water recedes, and then he comes ashore, and then everyone's scampering. The water comes back in, and then it goes dark, and then flares go up, and you see part of his torso, and then some of the military personnel are firing at him, and he comes around, and you see a little bit of his tail whipping around the corner, and then you have the whole sequence with that airport, water coming in, and bits and parts of his plates coming into view, and then his feet and some explosions and the male Muto, kind of puffing itself up. And then the slow camera pan from his feet on up. And then just that big roar. Like, I remember in that I'm like, my heart's pounding with excitement, just even thinking about it right now, where I saw that movie 3 times in theaters. And each time, like, I got like, that incredible excitement. My heart was pounding. I'm like, oh my, like, it's Godzilla. It's like, I've seen this guy in like 30 other movies before, but they got me anxious in a very good way to see him. I've never seen any other reveal like that in any other film before. No other movie has been able to build up a Godzilla entrance like this movie. The
Well,
24
it just
it's the most incredible reveal of a Godzilla ever.
well, it just makes you feel like you're just a kid in the candy shop when it comes to that particular scene, because it kind of gives you the like for me, it gives you that butterfly in the stomach thing, because it kind of gives you that, you know, feel, and then kind of takes you back into your like when you're a kid just watching these movies and stuff over the years, being a fan of the big guy. And the one thing is that being in Hawaii, like literally just about a year ago, and just seeing some of those places like that Hilton with kind of the rainbow on the side of the building there, that was kind of cool to see in person. And then one of the scenes that I just now realized after watching it, like it's in a different area, a little farther south from that Hilton hotel building, and it was called the Imperial. It was that one scene where you have all that water rushing through and people running away from it. You see like the Imperial sign. Well, I noticed that. God damn it! That the that the sign for that hotel changed over time, which
I'm sure.
like didn't realize it until now. And then that was kind of where I ate breakfast a couple times in that same exact building, and I just realized that now. So it's like the next time I have to go back, I'm going to have to take a picture of it, and then
And you go eat there and you tell the waiter, waitress, Godzilla was here. Do you know that Godzilla was here?
Yeah. And I try to see if there like the location of this Grand Hotel. I didn't quite see where it was, but I'm gonna have to try to check it again later. But yeah, it was like just being there like at least a year ago, and then also with the one scene when they were like the female Muto being in Vegas there, and I actually went there 2 years after the film came out, and just thinking back, being at those two places and then watching this movie is kind of like, oh hey, I was actually there, and I was at this place too, and all that stuff. So
well, I
kind of gives you that kind of that cool
personal
feelings, like
connection.
yeah, personal connection to the movie. Even
Well, I thought the
even
same
even
way.
though even though with Vegas, I was there a couple of years after the movie, and then with Hawaii 9 years after.
Well, and I felt the same way in 2019 when we went to San Francisco. There were places and stuff like in the Bay Area, like especially towards the end of the movie. I'm like, I know where that is. I know where that is. Like, and I walked up those hills, and yeah, I was in Chinatown there. I kind of know where that one arch thing is, and all the. Yeah, I mean, I after being there too and watching the movie a handful of times since then, it's like, yeah, I know where that's at, and like. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you get more of that personal connection with it as well. The legacy of this movie, though, like I was saying earlier, I think more and more fans are slowly starting to appreciate it more because
I know
this is a very good film.
Yeah, I know there's still maybe a little bit of a holdout on some people, because I'm still on some of those Facebook group postings and stuff, although I don't really post really much anything in Facebook, rarely at times, not even with the groups and stuff, but I still kind of see bits and parts of some of the hearsay and all that stuff. But I've still seen a little bit of holdout, but I think, yeah, what you were talking about more or less, I think some of those people are starting to kind of turn around a bit.
It's a very good film. Like it took me my second viewing to really
Same here.
understand what Gareth Edwards was accomplishing and why he did what he did with that film. And like ever since that second viewing, like this has been one of my personal favorite Godzilla movies because it is so well made. Is it flawless? No, and no movie is flawless. I've said that again hundreds of times on this podcast as well. Not even the 54. I've even criticized the 54 movie in areas as well. And I know for some people that's sacrilegious, but it's like, you got to be honest. But the 2014 movie is a very well made film. And, I think it deserves that sort of respect. I think Edwards has been one of my favorite directors over the last decade because I love his Rogue One. His Rogue One Star Wars film is my favorite Star Wars movie. And I watched The Creator, his most recent film. I watched that
still yet to see that one,
like however many months ago. That's very imaginative and creative as well. It's a very good film. And Gareth knows what he's doing. I think he is an underappreciated director that really should be getting more props, just in general, not just for what he did with the 2014 Godzilla movie, but in general with all of his projects that he's done. He is a very fantastic director. He's not just a director that I think has a knack for visually creating stunning scenery and all that, but he's a director that I think thinks things through and sets up certain shots because they're supposed to portray something in a certain way, but then makes sure that the writing and that the story is good as well. I mean, very rarely can you get directors that can do both. Usually a director is either very good with visuals and not story, or good with story and not visuals. Very rarely can you get a director that's good on both fronts. And Gareth is one of those directors, and I think he deserves more props than what he's been given.
Yeah, and the one thing that I wish that was able to make the cutting floor or the final phase was the Takarada scene. That's probably wasn't his decision to cut that out. But it would have been nice to have had that particular scene. And I'm probably guessing some of the fans are probably, that could be some of the main reasons with some of the fans not really sort of downing this movie a little bit for that particular reason. I may never know, but it would have at least been nice to seen that, but there could have, there are probably reasons for that to be cut out in the final.
It was cut out because the editors didn't think it really added anything to the film. And I think the editors weren't aware of Takarada and his history with the series anyway. But yeah, I don't see too many of those fans anymore. But once in a while, I still see them. And it's like, get over yourself. Like, yeah, it would have been nice to have seen them. But I understand why the editors made the decision that they made. Because if you're basing your whole liking or not liking a movie based on several seconds of a classic Godzilla actor being in the film for a few seconds, I think you got bigger issues. To me, like, yeah, it stinks, but if it didn't really serve much in the way of the film, then yeah, I understand why. And Takarada is a professional. He worked in movies for decades. I mean, he understands that things need to serve a purpose. Every movie goes through this. Every movie has many shots, and a lot of them are left on the cutting room floor because they didn't advance the story in one way or the other, and that's how it is, So, quit being petty and grow some balls and be an adult about this thing. I mean, that's the industry. Every movie goes through this. So, Grow up.
So, with that, we haven't really talked about much of the Godzilla design, and as well as the two Muto designs. First off, when I heard the word of Muto, I thought it was just sort of a placeholder until when the movie came out. I was like, it's the actual name of the monsters. And as far as the Muto design too, for me, I was a bit mixed with it at first, and when it came to the whole acronym of their name and everything, it didn't quite sit with me well at first. But I would, like you, over time, I started to like their design more, and as well as appreciate like the execution of the Mutos, and as well as their name as well. I pretty much kind of have my mind settled down and accepting their name, and I think it too it fits them more, especially with over time, and then thinking about it, and then watching the movie over and over again, and it's it's like I'm accepting more of their existence, and as well as the name, obviously. It just fits them more, and I really like how they're executed, and given this EMP sort of power. Although they don't, it's like,
It makes no sense when you realize that these creatures are supposed to be millions of years old. Like, what would an EMP have done back, in the prehistoric age? But whatever.
I was just going to say that when they go up against Godzilla, it doesn't really do much against Godzilla, because with radiation and nuclear and all that stuff. Although that they do harvest nuclear radiation and all that, so that could be. That's also the other thing too, is that they suck out all the energy, and how that they become more of a parasite, kind of like what they mentioned in the movie too, against Godzilla. So like when he feeds off of nuclear energy or other kinds of radiation, that they feed off the energy off of other existing things, including Godzilla too. So not only that, with the EMP thing not being much of a effective weapon against Godzilla, them sucking radiation or nuclear energy from not only just from nuclear power plants or other sources, but also feeding off of other life forms that feed on radiation, including Godzilla too.
Yeah, as far as the design, this Godzilla, not just the 2014, but the MonsterVerse version of Godzilla in general, is one of my all-time favorite designs. And I do specifically like the 2014 design, maybe to some extent a tad more than its regular design throughout what the remainder of the MonsterVerse that we get, where they bring back the old school dorsal plates. I think what Dotori did with bringing it back, yeah, I will admit, look, yes, it does look cool to bring those old plates onto the MonsterVerse Godzilla, but I think it was nothing more than just cheap fan service.
Well, and kind of in sort of what we discussed earlier when we were reviewing that film a few years back, how the movie sort of panders a little too much to the fan base, but yeah.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it is what it is. I've accepted it. It does look cool, but I think it was just kind of dumb to change it. I do like the more jagged dorsal plates, though, on this 2014 one, because it just makes it its own Godzilla more. And I love this Godzilla. I love the fact that for the first time ever, we got like gills on Godzilla, which will explain why he can stay in the ocean in perpetuity, because he's got gills. to breathe underwater. The fact that when he stands up, it's kind of like a bear. Like if you ever seen a bear stand up, it kind of like has its arms kind of dangling down a little bit, kind of like that. I love that stance. I love how this Godzilla looks in the face, in the body, the tail. I mean, I love everything about this Godzilla design, just in general, the whole MonsterVerse, including its different iterations, even with the classic dorsal spines and even the new pink Godzilla. I love the pink Godzilla. The pink Godzilla is like right up there in my top 5, maybe even 3 Godzilla designs. I love the pink Godzilla. And so I just adore this version. Just this Godzilla is always looking pissed off, more like, and I like that. This is a Godzilla that you can tell every movie, it doesn't matter who directs it, every movie that has the MonsterVerse Godzilla, and the directors and the writers have always done a very good job of adding personality to this Godzilla's face, because you can always tell by looking at his face in a given situation, kind of always thinking, yeah, he's angry most of the time, of course. But there were times like in this movie, like when he got knocked down and Brody was able to kind of see him face to face for a moment before his face was covered in all that debris. You just saw on Godzilla's face kind of this exhaustion and kind of like this, not really a sense of like maybe giving up per se, but just sort of like battered and worn out, with this fight with the Mutos up to that point. And even again, like after he kills the female Muto and he goes up to shore and he collapses from exhaustion and all that again too, like we don't get quite anything like that again. And arguably his fight with Ghidorah, it was more exhausting. Yes, he supercharged himself, but it still took him supercharging to defeat Ghidorah, and Ghidorah was a more brutal opponent than even these two Mutos were at the same time. And they did a wonderful job in this film, giving this Godzilla an incredible look, but just a great sense of its personality as well.
Yeah, when it comes to the 2014 Godzilla, I was just sort of thinking as far as the dorsal fins on this design, where they're not quite as prominent compared to after is it from King of the Monsters and beyond. With those, it sort of reminds me of the way how the dorsal fins on the 98 Godzilla, where they're kind of that triangular type of shape, sort of like the 2014, and then not quite as maybe like sort of a pattern here and there throughout the 98 one, but sort of resembles a little bit of that sort of like a callback to that particular design of the dorsal fin. So it's like, and I know that they were saying when they were making this film, trying to amalgamate or trying to meld a lot of the other designs of past Godzillas and trying to kind of combine them into this sort of Godzilla that we see now in a way, but also trying to come up with from real life type of creatures and all that stuff, alligators, so on and so forth. But yeah, this one is a really good design of Godzilla, and still kind of features that a little bit more the traditional look of Godzilla that we all know and all that stuff, but kind of making it like sort of their own in a way, make it look a little bit different, but also look a little bit more realistic and more grounded, with kind of combining not only some of the past Godzilla designs, but also some of the real animals that actually exist, and trying to make it a little bit more believable in that regard. But what are your thoughts on the Mutos?
I like them because they are definitely they are portrayed more or less even explicitly explained as like these parasites. And parasites, when we think of parasites, what do we think of? We think of creatures that kind of look like insects, and they definitely look like insects. And that is done intentionally. And as it was said numerous times, if these Mutos are successfully going to hatch their brood, that very much could be it. And so that's one of the things that I like about the Mutos is that they're similar to insects. If they are able to successfully breed, they could easily take over the planet. And I don't know how quickly they grow. I mean, we're never given anything like that as far as their growth cycle and all that in this movie, and even in supplemental material like prequel graphic novels and stuff like that. But the fact that these guys are like insects and that they can quickly bring about a large brood and all that. I mean, it's you get this sense that they are parasitic, and that's I think they do a good job of portraying them as such.
Yeah, and it's also sort of kind of a cool thing too that we also get this sort of story where you have like the eggs and everything that they hatch, could be the end of everything. And it's sort of the same thing with, again, bringing it back to the 98 Godzilla, where you had Godzilla laying tons of these eggs within Madison Square Garden. They say if
I think it was like 200 supposedly that Godzilla.
Yeah, it's like if all these eggs hatch, it's going to be the end of the world. So I don't know if it was sort of a callback to that particular part of the story of Godzilla 98 and bring it into the 2014 version. It's kind of a cool thing in a way, if that was done on purpose, but it's just sort of a coincidence at least.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really even think about it until you just brought it up, but yeah, I almost think I'm gonna assume it's a coincidence, personally.
Right. Let's see. Is there really anything else that anything in particular that we haven't really touched on yet?
I just kind of want to say, and we've kind of touched up here and there on the MonsterVerse itself. I just want to say, like, a decade of the MonsterVerse, I think the MonsterVerse has proven to be successful, despite the fact that there is a segment of the fan base out there that doesn't like it. And yeah, you can't please everybody. And that's to be a given. I think, though, those folks are even in a smaller minority than we potentially think they are, because these films are making very good money. Even like I said earlier, Godzilla vs. Kong in the middle of a pandemic made over 400 million worldwide. New Empire already is over 500 million. And so, this saga is hitting a chord with people. People love Godzilla, love Kong, love these kinds of movies. And the MonsterVerse has been very successful. And like I've said, throughout the course of the decade when we've covered these movies individually, I've even said it a little bit today. I would have done things a little bit differently here and there with each of these films, all 5 of them. But with taking them as they are, I think they're incredibly fun films and wonderful modern iterations of 2 of cinema's biggest, literally and figuratively, stars. And I love these films. The MonsterVerse is up there for me as far as like one of my personal favorite Godzilla sagas. In fact, I think occasionally it is my favorite saga. I intend, once New Empire comes out on home video on June 11th, I intend within that first week or two to try and do like a marathon of all 5 films. And I think the MonsterVerse is wonderfully made. I think fans definitely are accepting of it, because if they weren't, we wouldn't have a saga. We would everything probably would have stopped either after Skull Island or King of the Monsters, perhaps. And even King of the Monsters, a lot of people say, well, it wasn't as high. It was like the lowest grossing of the MonsterVerse. Well, people tend to forget that movie, and this is Warner Brothers' fault. That movie was released like 1 week, I think, before. I think it was in either Endgame or Infinity War. It was one of those. And so after that first week,
I think it was Endgame.
And so, yeah, it had one good weekend. And then after that, it's fighting up against a film that I don't know if it still is the highest grossing movie of all time or not, but one of the highest grossing movies of all time. So, you know, and I see a lot of people anymore complimenting that film. And again, when it first came out, the tenor was sort of ho-hum on that film. And now I'm seeing more people like, no, I really like this film. And again, I just think that movie, had Warner Brothers released it sooner or wait until Endgame started to die down, that movie would have been a big blockbuster too. And it still made money. It still did well, but it could have done better. If Warner Brothers was like looking at the slate and kind of like, we shouldn't release it at this point. Let's wait a while or release it sooner if they could. But the MonsterVerse saga, people are eating it up. It is what people want. New Empire toys are kind of hard to come by. And when you do find them, people are,
especially in your area.
My Walmart now, actually, I'm able to find them more. So, but I think part of that is because New Empire has been in theaters like 5-6 weeks now. So kind of I think the excitement is worn down enough.
Yeah, because I checked the movie theater here; it's already gone. But even before the movie came out, I was able to see and get at least a few of the figures of the New Empire at our Walmart here.
Yeah, and our Walmart was real late to get
late to the game.
Yeah, but this, I mean, I think the saga of, MonsterVerse is a good one. I mean, yeah, you may not like every aspect of the MonsterVerse. You may not like all the films, but again, not every movie is made for you and made to cater to you. What you hate, someone else may really enjoy. And the 14 films started off. I still think on some level it's a bit sad that the tone that was started with that movie didn't work itself into more films. But again, like we said earlier, this MonsterVerse is somewhat a mirror image of the Showa films, in which you had the first 2 movies that the tone was kind of serious, but then by movie 3, they're getting into wacky territory. You had Godzilla and Skull Island kind of with that more serious tone and stuff. And then by movie 3, in the Showa era, was King Kong versus Godzilla. In MonsterVerse, King of the Monsters, things are kind of going off the rails a little bit. And I'm okay with that now. I've come to terms with that. And I really enjoyed these films. Like I said, I was never much of a fan of King of the Monsters for a while, but then after kind of sitting down and realizing how things work out in the Showa era and looking at King of the Monsters itself more closely, I realized there's a lot to love there. And there's a lot to enjoy and be grateful for. And again, we seem to forget how how good we have it now. We have it real good. We thought things were incredible back in 98 when that Godzilla movie came out then, with all the merchandising and then all the attention it was getting. Like Godzilla Mania had never reached that height before. And now it's even bigger because we've had 10 years now with 5 movies, and Godzilla is now officially a part of American pop culture because of the MonsterVerse. And it was started with that 98 film over 2.5 decades ago.
Well, with the MonsterVerse, not only the MonsterVerse, but Toho kind of has some part in it as well recently with the anime trilogy, and then obviously Shin Godzilla.
Well, yeah.
Most recently -1, but compare it to 32 years ago when we started becoming fans of Godzilla after watching our first Godzilla movie, which was the Sea Monster one. Compare that and then just think about it with today, with how much that we've gotten it. Even though maybe like several or a year after watching that, we got the first series in the Treadmaster Godzilla King of the Monsters toy series right after that, and then sort of went into Godzilla Wars, which I've got a bunch of those things kind of back here and all that, and sort of led up to the 98 Godzilla movie there. Some handful years later, but then it sort of died down a little bit after the 98 Godzilla, but you get things here and there with the Heisei movies finally starting to come out on VHS and or DVD at the time, and I remember of the excitement that we had when those finally came out, and like things during the period between the 98 Godzilla, although you get the Millennium series, but the hype wasn't quite there as much as far as I can remember. And I can remember the whole 50th anniversary with Final Wars and all that. Like some people were like hyping that up, and then it just felt like it was sort of kind of a thud. Kind of
a lot of people were disappointed by Final Wars.
Yeah. And then it was sort of hush hush after that movie came and came and gone. And then all of a sudden you get the 2014 Godzilla movie, and things have basically picked up in hype mode from there.
Godzilla, at least in this country, has never been more mainstream than he has in the last decade. Yeah, it technically started with the 98 film with all the major hype. And then, it fizzled. And because of the internet, and then the fact that Sony bought rights to release all those Millennium films, even though it wasn't as mainstream at that time, if you were a Godzilla fan, you were made aware of it because obviously you went out and sought news and stuff. Mm-hmm. But not until 2014 did Godzilla here officially has become more mainstream and has continued to be that way. Never in this country's history has Godzilla been able to grab quite the imaginative hold on people like it has now. Yeah, all those movies, a lot of those Showa movies and stuff, were released in theaters. But again, Godzilla was always sort of second fiddle and always portrayed as a joke to a lot of people. And even then, it wasn't until, John Belushi, in my opinion, infamously, trashed Godzilla in that NBC Godzilla versus Megalon 1 hour special that they had back in 76 or whenever that was, did Godzilla even become more noticeable by American individuals. And again, Godzilla was the butt of jokes. He's not anymore. yeah, people still have jokes and stuff, but Godzilla is beloved now. He is a part, and it's all thanks to Warner Brothers legendary Gareth Edwards, his crew, and everyone else that has been involved with this whole MonsterVerse saga. And yeah, I mean, there's no denying it. Even if you don't care for this MonsterVerse series, you should at least be excited at the fact that it's made Godzilla more mainstream, that Godzilla is more prominent now than he ever has been in this country. And that as a result, too, he's creating a new generation of fans. These movies are. And that's something you should be excited about. Yeah. Because without a lot of younger fans, this series would have died out and Godzilla would be in hiatus mode right now.
And just with that one guy that you're talking about early in this episode,
Mr. Jerkoff, kind of, I'm going to call
him. When he was sort of harassing some of the people and insulting them and all that stuff, all I would have to say is that just don't take things for granted for what they are, and just at least be thankful for Godzilla finally getting the attention that he rightfully deserves after so many years of kind of these crazy, goofy sort of type of movies, admittedly, but also being kind of the butt of the joke almost every time, especially what you mentioned about with the Godzilla versus Megalon one there. So, but with how not only the 2014 Godzilla was made, but also giving the attention to the original Toho Godzilla movies that were made recently with Shin Godzilla and especially Godzilla -1, he wouldn't be mainstream or getting the attention that he rightfully deserves nowadays. So at least be grateful for the MonsterVerse giving him the attention.
Yeah, I mean, it's echoing everything that I said, but you know, I don't think there's really much more we can add. I mean, you know, we've sung the praises of 2014, but at the same time, I think given it the sort of criticisms that it deserves, and rightfully so. But again, no movie is perfect. Like I've said again for the umpteenth time, I would have done each one of these movies a little bit more differently had I been in the director's chair. But yeah, I mean, the MonsterVerse saga, in my opinion, is very successful. I mean, the numbers don't lie. I mean, these movies are making money. They're still popular. They're going to make a sixth one. And it's just a question of, will the sixth one kind of put this whole series to bed, or are they still maybe looking to try to go further after that? I mean, time will tell. Yeah. But, you know, this is a wonderful time, again, to be a Godzilla fan, just because of the MonsterVerse in and of itself.
Yeah, and speaking of the sixth movie, I know Wingard. I know we've seen Kong kind of being the main center of the last two movies, and from the sounds of it, the next installment of the MonsterVerse is going to now be focused more on Godzilla, the center. So, well, we'll have to see as far as what the tone of the film is going to be, if it's going to be kind of the crazy, wacky thing, or are they going to sort of maybe do a little bit of that, but then maybe try to tone it down, maybe do a little bit of serious things. Who knows? And as far as what the next baddie is going to be, I know there's been rumors and stuff out there on a couple of them. We're not entirely sure.
Those are the
We're not entirely sure yet. Well, then also there's been things on Biollante too, but we'll have to see when that time comes. I know there's going to have to be negotiations and behind the scenes as far as getting the license with one of those two. If it's going to be an actual thing, who knows? But until then, we're just going to be kind of in the dark for the time being, especially with Wingard being at the helm, because it seems like with the last two movies of his, and it's probably going to be the same thing, that they sort of do a lot of the marketing stuff pretty late. When it gets to the real release of the actual movie. So we're not going to really know much of anything. Maybe a little bits and pieces here and there, and maybe some leaks. But yeah, we're not going to really know anything until then.
And I wouldn't even focus too much on that right now, because it'll probably, like I said, it'll probably be another 3 years, because it seems like on average, with the exception of a couple movies in the series, it's been about a 3-year wait on average. And New Empire still is in some theaters in this country. So enjoy the new movie. We got a new movie. Let's not get tired of it yet and ready to say next. I mean, on some level, that's great, because it means you're excited and you want to see more. But let's enjoy what we currently have and celebrate that. And then within a couple of years' time, then we can move on to the next one. But with that, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. We're not entirely sure yet what we're going to do. That's something we're going to be discussing here off air. But thank you so much for joining us on celebrating 10 years of not just Godzilla 2014, but a decade of the MonsterVerse saga. One of the best of all time.
But hard to believe it's 10 years already.
I know. I
felt like
remember
yesterday
when it came out.
Yeah, I can still remember some of that stuff, and I still got the poster right outside my office here. I still need to hang it up. I need a new poster frame, because the poster frame on that one is shit. But but I do have like the original theatrical poster, and then I think the other one is a reversal, where I had one being displayed of like the Halo jump scene, and then you see his dorsal fin kind of on the left side there. But it just hard to believe 10 years.
But we'll let you know, and we'll see you here in a couple of weeks.
All right. Until then, we'll see you guys next time.